Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Spin It Social Hour. My name is Stefan Kaplan, and I am a social media and visual strategist, and it is a pleasure being here with you this morning on the Spin It Social Hour. The Spin It Social Hour is a labor of love born out of care and concern for our photo community. For when this pandemic hit, I decided that I needed to do something in order to reach out and help the artists around everywhere, photographers, artists, and visual creatives everywhere. Because when this pandemic hit, everybody was being affected economically and many other ways. It has been a rough road for everyone. So today we are taking a bit of a change, a little bit of a twist, and I am bringing on Ricardo Jose Mujica, Ricky Mujica, my good friend who I grew up with. And it is a wonderful moment to have him on here because he is a very, very talented painter. And I wanted to expand this show a bit. And this is the week, and Ricky's coming on to do that with us. So we are thrilled. So, as I said, I am a social media and visual strategist. I've worked with the likes of the Pulitzer Prizes, AARP. I'm also an adjunct professor at FIT, and I coach executives and professors around the country in social media, and I work with Sri Srinivasan and his Digi Mentors group, producing live streams and many other things around the world. So I am going to give Ricky the build-up that he deserves, but before we do that, we have to pay bills and we have to do other things with shows these days. So I wanted to introduce you to my first sponsor. It is Real Talk, live from the barn, with a true brand visionary strategist, Emilio Pardo. Here we go. Real Talk, live from the barn. This week's topic with Emilio Pardo and Dr. Janet Taylor, a psychiatrist, is how to deal with the onslaught of stress with everything that is being thrown at us these days due to COVID-19, the economic uncertainty, and the racial injustice in this country. So we will discuss that. I am actually the producer and the director of this show. So we look forward to seeing you tomorrow, Sunday, September 6th at 11 a.m. So now to give Ricky the buildup that he deserves, because that's what we're here for. So here we go. Enjoy. Born and raised in New York City and now living in beautiful and vibrant Montclair, New Jersey, Ricardo Jose Mujica studied art at the High School of Art and Design, Parsons in Paris, and at Parsons School of Design, the New School for Social Research, where he won a full presidential scholarship. The artwork of Ricky was initially influenced by the old masters, and this connection has helped him achieve a high level of success as an illustrator. Before returning to his roots as a fine artist, Ricky created art for all the top publishing companies, including HarperCollins, Harlequin, Bantam, and Scholastic. Ricky has also created art for major magazines, including the New York Times Magazine and Ebony. Ricky, who considers himself a humanist, representational painter, currently teaches at the Art Students League of New York and has been on the teaching faculty at the Portrait Society of America. Folks, it is a true honor and so fun to bring on my dear friend, Ricky Mujica.
Hello.
Ricky, how are you, buddy?
Good, how are you, brother?
I'm good. We had a few minor technical things going on, but hopefully they'll iron themselves out. So it's wonderful to have you here. How are things in Montclair today?
Pretty good. The weather's nice. You know, looking forward to going skateboarding with my son and then trying to spend a little time in the studio a little bit later. How are you doing over there?
I'm doing well, man. You know, I'm just taking a deep breath every day like everybody else, you know, when we're dealing with this pandemic. And, you know, it's tough. The kid just started school. Son is 13 going on 14, and he just started school. And it's going to be an interesting semester, to say the least.
That's for sure.
And your two kids too, right? I mean, what are you doing with your kids?
Well, yeah, I have one that's 7 and one that's 14, about to be 15.
Mm-hmm.
And they're starting school, but the school got delayed a week. Um, and my son is eager. He's really upset that he's not going to be in class, but he's eager to go back to school. I had to give him the desk from my studio, so now I got papers and files all over the floor because he needed a desk so that he can do his schoolwork when it starts.
Oh, wow. That's really something.
But they've been holding up pretty good. They've been holding up pretty good during this time, you know.
Yeah, no, sorry. I had a little thing there. Anyway, it's going to be a rough road for the kids. It's a lot of adjustment for all of them. And it's also a lot of adjustment for us. I mean, you do all your painting right there in the studio, right?
Yeah. Well, the part about being in the studio is pretty much the same. What's different is that now the kids are home all the time, and so I have to keep going back to help with them. Now when school starts, we have a planned. My wife does the homeschooling. I mean, because he loves to be with my wife. So he sits next to my wife, and I'm in charge of gym and recess. So he comes to get me, and with the basketball or the skateboard, and so that's nice. But otherwise, my life as an artist hasn't changed much, except that my family's around me all the time, and that's kind of good. I mean, if it wasn't for the sadness of the number of people who I know who have lost through this COVID. So I'm kind of almost enjoying the quarantine. It's nice to be with the family.
Yeah. Well, we were just talking about that. I'm having some audio problems. I apologize. So I'm trying to figure it out here. I got numerous comments here that there's audio problems. Let's see. Give me 1 second. Sometimes these things happen, and we're going to try to deal with it. So let's see. Apologies.
While you're fixing the audio, can you hear me? Is my audio okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. You're good. So what I'm trying to do is figure out what's going on here.
Well, while you're figuring that out, I want to introduce everybody to Howard in the back. That's Howard standing up, and on the table is Jane. Those are my models, and as you can see during the pandemic, I haven't been able to feed them that much, so they're getting a little skinny.
Okay, well, all I can say is they're going to get skinnier if I keep having these audio problems. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to talk a lot less, and I'm going to let you do a lot of the talking, because this is a mystery, and unfortunately, this is what happens with live streaming sometimes. So the only other thing I could do is try to take my webcam off. Let's try that.
Hi. Hello. Wow, I feel all alone now. Stefan? I think we lost Stefan for.
Nope.
There you go.
I'm here. So let's see. I think that may have solved the problem.
Yeah, you sound better.
I don't know what's going on with my webcam. I don't know. There it is again. Okay. So anyway, the show must go on. So what we're going to do.
Hold on a second. My wife is trying to tell me something about the mic. Yeah.
Whenever he's speaking.
Yes.
I feel like maybe we're getting it from you. That maybe you turn your sound off when he's speaking or something.
How about? Well, let's see. Let's see if I turn down my sound.
Okay.
If I turn down my sound, how you speak? Go ahead. Speak.
Let's see. I don't know. How's that?
No, I can't. It's the same. Yeah, it's definitely on your end.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the questions, and I'm going to mute myself, and you're going to show up all your beautiful work as we talk. Okay?
All right.
We got to. The show's got to go on.
We just got to go. The show's got to go on.
Show's got to go on. So, okay. So, my first question, Ricky, is How did you get started in painting, and what was the experience that attracted you to the art scene?
Well, I've been drawing my whole life since I was a little kid, and I was very interested in drawing, but I didn't think much of it. And when I was in junior high school, I had, in New York, you have these schools that teach you a trade, trade schools. And I applied to all the different schools: Stuyvesant, Brooklyn Tech, High School of Printing, High School of Aviation, and everybody told me don't apply to art and design, right? But everybody else wanted me to apply to something else. So I applied to art and design, anyways, and music and art. And in the end, I chose art and design because that's the only place that nobody wanted me to go. And I didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings. My teacher wanted me to go to Stuyvesant. The principal wanted me to go to Brooklyn Tech. The printing teacher wanted me to go to High School of Printing. So I picked art and design. When I got to art and design, I picked cartooning initially as a major. And my friend at that time, my best friend Mark Texera, who's now a very famous comic book artist, told me about this morning class where people would get up in the morning and paint, before class. And we used to get to school at 5:30 in the morning. Well, these people would get to school 5:30 in the morning, wait for the janitor to come open up the door. And at 6, we'd all run up to the 4th floor and, we'd pose for each other and we'd paint. And we did that every single day in high school. And so when I joined that group, it was amazing. I felt like I was home, right from from my first painting. It just felt natural to have a paintbrush in my hand. And that's when I began to paint. And being part of that group allowed me to get better. That right there on the screen right now with the boxing gloves, that's me posing for the group in the morning.
I know, it's awesome.
Yeah. At that time I was boxing too. I was I was a Golden Glove fighter too. So I posed, with my boxing gloves in the for the morning group. But it was a wonderful experience, and I learned a lot. And nearly everybody out of that class got scholarships out of that group, that morning group. And mind you, we weren't getting credit for it. The teachers, Max Ginsberg and Erwin Greenberg, who were two wonderful people who were just doing it out of the love of their heart, out of the love in their heart. We're holding this thing, and I never missed a day. I was there every morning at 5:30. Me and Mark were usually the first ones to get there. Couldn't wait to run up to the room. And then in my senior year, what we did, between my 11th and 12th grade, my friend Stephen Assel, who's an amazing painter, he rented a dance studio down on 58th Street and 8th Avenue where they held auditions now. But in those days, it was just an old, decrepit dance studio. And we would rent this dance studio, and, everybody would chip in for the model. And through that summer, we painted, and I learned a lot during that summer. And then during school, we would go to the morning class. And then during lunch, me and Mark would run up to Max Ginsberg's room, and paint with the students. And then after class, we'd paint, and that's how I really got into painting. And then
it's amazing how you've gone through life and progressed with your painting, having known you all these years.
That class led to a lot. Everybody in that class got scholarships, and it was really a great experience. So that's how I got into painting. And then when I got out of college, I went straight into doing romance cover illustration, because that was really the only viable way to make a living at that time. And realism wasn't very popular in those days. We had to swim against the grain. Now, I feel kind of jealous. These young students now, the people coming out of the schools now, where realism has gotten really, really popular. But back in those days, back in the 80s, you would show people your paintings and they'd go, "Oh, you do that old stuff? Why don't you do graffiti or something like that?" As a matter of fact, there's a funny story. So on the last day of my first year of Parsons, I'm down in the village, and we have to empty out our lockers. And so so me and my best friend in college, my first year, his name was David Panton, who was also a fantastic artist who had gone to the morning class. We are taking home our paintings, all day long. We're going back and forth taking home our paintings, and it's the last run of the night. I got 5 big paintings, and David, who's black, has 5 beautiful paintings with him, right? And so now imagine it's 10 p.m. at night, right? A big, an Hispanic Puerto Rican kid with an afro. That's me. I had an afro like this big. I looked like a lollipop. I was skinny with a big afro. I looked like a dandelion. And David, we're walking through the West Village with these paintings that look like they were done in another century. And the police stopped us and say, "Hey, what you got there?" And I said, "Oh, these are our paintings." And they said, "Can I see?" And they looked at her painting and said, "You didn't do that. You didn't do that." And I said, "Yeah." And the other one says, "I thought you guys only did graffiti." It was the graffiti. Anyway, they took us back to the school, but by that time the school is closed and there was nobody that could vouch for us. And in those days we didn't carry ID. I had 50 cents to get home. That was the train fare, and there was no phones. They tried to call our parents. Nobody answered the phone because my mom didn't answer the phone after 9 o'clock. And so they took us into the station, and we spent the night sitting on the wooden bench in the police station with our paintings behind the desk while they would try to figure out those were our paintings, because they wouldn't believe that we did it. And the funny thing is that neither of us, it didn't occur to either of us to say, "Can we do a drawing to show you?" We just sat there, and it was an experience. It was something out of a movie, because in those days, New York, you're talking about 80s New York. So we're sitting in this police station. There are hookers coming in, and and it was a
New York City in the day, it was really gritty.
Yeah, it was really cool. But yeah, I mean, but that was the thing, in the 80s, nobody believed people did this stuff that much, and as far as we knew, there weren't that many people doing it around the world. It wasn't until later that I realized there were all these pockets of realist painting, all around. There was like the Boston School with Paul Ingbertson. There were the Chicago School with Richard Schmidt. There was in Spain, you had, Antonio Lopez. You had, so there were pockets, but we didn't know. As far as there was no internet, so we couldn't get together. So as far as we knew, we were working on it in this way that nobody wanted us, that nobody appreciated.
Well, the thing that's saddest, I'm going to try one other thing. Hold on a second. The thing that's saddest, I just muted Ricky for a second because we're having some audio technicals. I'm going to put him back on as soon as I finish saying what I say. We're going to have to do that for this show. It's a tough technical issue that we'll have to solve at another time. We apologize, folks. My name is Stefan Kaplan. I am the host of the Spin It Social Hour. And my guest today is Ricky Mujica, who's an incredibly talented painter from Montclair, New Jersey. We grew up together, and it's just wonderful to have him on today. But one of the things I wanted to say to Ricky while he's muted for a second is, it's sad that in this day and age, we're still dealing with that, and even worse with racial profiling and other things, and that you had to experience that, Ricky, as an artist. And that's what saddens me particularly.
Yeah, okay. The interesting thing is that I didn't tell the story for that reason. I told the story because just to give you an example of how
right, I realize that
you believe that we did this. When it was happening,
right,
it was just a regular. It's a funny thing how times have changed. While it's happening to us, neither of us are thinking that this is out of the normal, which it is, right? We had no ID, we had the paintings, and the police just took us in until they could prove that those were our paintings,
right,
or whatever. And in the morning, when we were there all night, and in the morning, David's mom came and picked us up, right? They got in touch with David's mom, and she came and vouched for us and brought David's college ID to show that we were Parsons, but while it's happening, it's like we're, we weren't feeling slighted because it was, in those days, I'm so used to getting stopped. You know how New York was. I had an afro. You could barely see my head, face, and so getting stopped by the police was, it's happened several times, a month.
No, I realize that.
So we didn't even really think much of it. It's just really. It's a funny story, but we weren't mad or anything.
Right. No, I didn't bring it up to that. Yeah, I didn't bring it up for any political reasons and everything else, and all the injustice and other things that are going on right now, which we need to fix and deal with, and we are, and hopefully we will continue to. But I just wanted to make that as a a side note, because it's true. I mean, but we didn't think that back then. It was different, but now we do. And anyway,
Well, now we're aware of it,
now we're aware of it, fully aware of it. Unfortunately, I would actually say we're hyper aware of it, which is a sad thing.
Well, I mean, I think it's kind of a good thing, right? I mean,
Right.
it is. I think it is a good thing. I think it's important because, as Will Smith said, it's not that it's just beginning; it's happening now. It's that it's finally being recorded, right?
Right.
Because
right.
there were so many times when that kind of thing happened to us,
Right.
especially coming home at night from Roxy.
Right. Well, here's a great question from Lee, who we grew up with. Lee says, question, do you feel that your skating helped your creativity as a painter? The book Originals by Adam Grant talks to performance, such as dance, positively affecting creativity. That's a good one.
That's a good one. And you know what? There's something there. I think more so my painting affected my skating. So, the things that I learned in painting, and I would always try to use in my skating. And I guess maybe the skating might have affected my painting. If you all remember how I used to skate, it always looked like I was just like I was in a tornado. It looked like I was about to fall, and wild. And my painting, there's that in my painting. There's sometimes the wildness of the brushstroke.
Well, you were, and that's a very really interesting observation. I have to say, Ricky, I've skated with you for years, and I always thought your skating was phenomenal, and I think it only translated incredibly well to your painting then.
Thank you. Well, it's funny because I think all the arts are related, right? Music is related to painting, to dance. They're all related, right? And many of the things that you learn in one art form you can carry into another. So definitely, things that I learned with painting, I would think about in art, and I would think about in when I was skating, when I was dancing, trying to keep it interesting, like with art, I have, there are all these rules about, composition and design. And the truth is, I think there's just really one rule, right, for all the arts. And that one rule is make it interesting, keep it interesting, judge it, make it interesting. And the way you make it interesting is that you add conflict, you have soft passages and hard passages, straight lines and curves, light and dark, right? You keep the contrast going, you have rhythm and all kinds of stuff within the painting, right? And I think it's the same when you're skating, when you're doing, dance, right? You have parts where you're a lot of burst of energy, and then parts, there's.
Well, so my question to you, Ricky, is what's your favorite thing in life to work on as a painter? We're looking at your studio, by the way, through this visual here, and what's the one subject you're most passionate about, Ricky?
Well, now these days it's family, right? And it's life. It's life and death, to be honest, right? And I'm always trying to capture a moment in time, a specific moment in time, not any moment, but just something that we don't notice, but we could say, oh yeah, I've been there. Reading to your child at night. I mean, that was such a wonderful thing that my wife did every day to my daughter. And, I knew I had to paint it. And it's one, aside from the fact that painting your family gives you free models, and I'm a cheapskate, right? It gives you free models. I also just love the idea of family. I think it's amazing, especially from a sort of, I guess, a voyeur, looking at what women do, which I think is amazing. The way my wife used to, as one of my paintings show, used to put on her makeup while breastfeeding. or she'd be working on the computer and pumping. She would, the way, I think mothers can multitask and and um, and do so many things. I mean, I don't have.
Well, you call this painting
Yeah.
multitasking.
Yep.
Why don't you tell everybody the story about this, Ricky, and how it became this like internet and social media like
Uh,
just insane moment?
this painting is a really it's an interesting it's interesting, right? Because when I was making the painting, I had no idea it was going to cause such a stir, right? Um, it's been shared like 2 million times. It's won several awards, and and the funny thing is that I didn't think much of the painting when I was making it. When I did the painting, I never quite finished it, and that's probably a good thing, right? It's been hard to leave a painting as unfinished as this one again since that. But I couldn't finish it, and then I sold it before, But I'm glad I took a picture of it. But um, there's so many stories related to this painting, and I think because it hits a chord. Um, um, for instance, I got an email, just to give you an example of some of the stories. I got an email from a woman in Spain, um, telling me that she saw my painting, and I need to take down every instance of it on the internet, or she's going to send her lawyers after me. And how was I able to break into her computer and get a picture of her, and get this picture of her and her daughter, right? And I said, what? And at first I thought she was kidding. I said, thank you. I guess that's a compliment. She says, no, I'm serious. This is a photo my husband took, and he used a program. That's what she said. A program to make it into a painting, right? So I looked her up and I found her on LinkedIn, and she's not a psycho. She's like the CEO, like of a major company in Spain, right? And I'm like, so I had to show her, that I did this painting in 2008, long before she had a kid, right? I did, it won an award before her kid was born. And I looked her up, and she looks just like my wife, and her daughter looks exactly the same. And I said to her, you can go ahead and sue, but you're going to be, you're going to make look like a fool. This is my wife and daughter.
Wow, that is one wild story.
Yeah. So then she apologized. Another time I got a guy from Long Island PM me on Facebook, and he says, how did you get to see my wife and daughter naked? How did you paint my wife? And I also thought he was kidding, right? And then I realized he's serious. He's like, how did you get this of my wife? Or and like sort of insinuating that maybe I'm cheating, or I saw his wife naked or something. I said, that's not your wife, that's my wife. And he says, no, it isn't. And he shows me a picture of his wife that looks like my wife, but with puffed up hair and fake breasts. And I said, you can see it's not my wife. Daughter looked exactly like my wife, like my daughter. And it was crazy. She, he got really, he just kept PMing me, how did you do that? Where did, why didn't I find out about it? Why, and I'm like, no, this is my wife. You don't understand. So, and he just kept.
Well, Ricky, I have to tell you, that's definitely your you know how Andy Warhol, so everybody has their 15 minutes of fame. That has got to be your weirdest 15 minutes of fame. And then on top of it, then you have people like Padma Lakshmi from Top Chef and other things tweeting about this and posting about it and showing the beauty of being a mother who's multitasking and doing all this stuff. And look, lo and behold, it even gets even wilder because Padma is putting up your painting with her photo.
That's true. I actually sent her a message, but she never responded. But I thought that was great. But there's been Russian copies of this, Chinese copies. One time I was, browsing through a website in China, a Chinese website, because I ended up noticing that they had prints by some of my artist friends, and they were selling handmade paintings of this, right? They were selling prints of this painting, handmade. So I was trying to order one. I was going to order one because I thought it was kind of funny, but then the website got closed down before I got to order it. But they were selling 8x10 hand painted versions of this, and I'm like, wow, that's news to me. I had there's a oh, I should have showed you. It made the front page of Reddit once, right? And in it, somebody put up.
I heard about that.
Somebody put a spoof of it, put up a spoof of it that they did with a woman looked just like my wife, lighting the same, except instead of holding a baby, she's holding a cat. And I thought that was really funny. And I thought then on Reddit there was a whole discussion, about the painting and whether it's pornography, because I've been flagged so many times on Facebook for the painting. Like Facebook has shut me down for 2 days, and then they said, "Oh, okay, we made a mistake. Somebody flagged your painting, whatever." Right? What was I gonna say?
Okay.
See that?
That's called I've called that COVID brain fog.
Yeah, that's me, brain fog.
But hold on, I wanted to ask you a question because, sorry about the technical issue, folks. I'm going to mute myself after I ask the question. But I wanted you to take us through the process of a few things, and I saw a few things there of how you start from scratch to going to some of the paintings that you beautifully create. Hold on 1 second.
What? Oh, I see.
So my question, Ricky, is I just showed I showed just a few of in the process of where you go from scratch to the end effect of this masterful work that you do. Talk about that a little, please.
So, well, a few years ago, I had to go solvent free, right? I used to use solvents, turpentine and mineral spirits to block in the painting, which is normally what you do. You paint thin with mineral spirits and you sort of splash on the paint. And what happened is I started to get really sick from that. I got sick where like just if the mineral spirits was in the room, I would start getting this pain in my stomach, and I could only paint for 2 hours. And I looked for every different way I could to change my way of painting. I mean, to have a substitute for the mineral spirits. I tried spike lavender oil. And that was terrible because it's so smelly, even though it's non-toxic. It's so smelly that I did a demo once and half the people walked out. So I thought I was going to have to stop and maybe switch to acrylic. I didn't want to do that, right? And then I discovered that the use of solvents in painting didn't happen until the mid 18th century. I mean, into the mid 19th century, and with great there was a lot of conflict among artists about whether to use solvents or not, and now that's the norm, but before that, nobody used any solvents, which meant that all those wonderful Rembrandts and Rubens paintings and Velasquez were done solvent free. So I had to change up my style. I said, oh, well, let me try that. Let me try working solvent free. And I discovered my way of working. And what I do now is I used to just start with paint, it was just a solvent and make sort of a washy thing. I don't use pencil or anything like that. But now what I did instead is now I use the very soft charcoal and I do my underdrawing. And that's where my composition is. I show my composition, where I know where everything is going to be. I got my proportions. I got my distinction between the light and the dark. And then when that's done, I brush it off and it leaves a ghost. And then I go over that with a brush. And then I continue as if I did. And so I work with layers. And usually there are four passes, right? So that first pass is that whole blocking stage where I do the charcoal and then I wipe it off. And then I just go over the charcoal lines with paint now that I have my proportions set up. My second pass is what I call a dead layer pass, right? It's what is called a dead layer pass. And that's where I get, mostly the different big planes of color down. My third pass is where you sort of buckle down and you work your way, you work it out, right? You start in one area and you work it out, you almost finish it, and you move on to the painting. It's sort of up until that point you're jumping all around, but at that point you begin to just work, one area at a time. And at this stage, you're not. It's not even as if you're painting an object or paint, because you can't really
Right.
paint an object. You can't paint the nose, right? You can only paint the patterns and shapes that come back to your eye. You're translating 3 dimensions into two. So I'm just painting the shapes. And then the
Right.
fourth pass is what I call the beauty pass. That's where I go in and I try to make it art. I add a little bit. Um, by the way, the painting that you have up right now
Hmm.
is a wonderful painting I did for, um, my friend Sky. It's her father and her daughter, and you know, we did this painting. He didn't know. He thought I was just an artist doing
Right.
it for myself, and then we
Right.
did. And unfortunately, he
I know he passed away. Right?
from COVID. Yeah,
Yeah, I know. Well, we grew up with around Sky, so
yeah. It's what a wonderful man this guy was, and it's just such a picture of health. He was just super smart, super beloved by his students. And just it's really tragic what has happened, and so those are some of the things that make it hard to really um, appreciate this time right
yeah.
now.
So on the work that we've been showing and everything, so many portraits, so many beautiful representations of people from so many different walks of life. I have a viewer that wanted to ask you a question, so I'm going to bring her on.
Okay.
This is Kathy Brickman. She lives in Ramsey, New Jersey with me here, and she's a very talented artist, and she wanted to ask you a question, Ricky.
Hi, Kathy.
Hi, Ricky. So I just want to start off by, and I know, and this has already been said, that your ability to capture maternal instinct and love is incredible. I just want to start off by saying that. So here's my question. All right, I have to preface it by saying I started doing portraits only about 2 years ago, and I'm doing like political figures for a project, and I did RBG. That was my very first portrait, and I think that was a good one to start with because of her age, and went along fine. Loved the way it turned out. Did a couple other ones, and now I'm working on Greta Thunberg, and this painting has caused me so much frustration. I started it before the pandemic. I've cried over it. I've wanted to throw it in the garbage. I've given up on it for a couple months, gone back to it. So my question is, I'm sure you probably had frustration in the beginning and now you're just a master, but do you ever experience frustration like that? Or like,
I hate to tell you, but that never goes away. Even my multitasking painting was frustration with things that I saw in it that were wrong. So I never, I would throw it away and then come pick it up. I put it down. And as a matter of fact, I'm working on a painting right now that I started out. I was so excited about it. And then now I'm not so excited about it. And then I was excited about it again. And now I'm not excited about it. And now I've started a new one, smaller, but you can see it's over here. Right. So I got this painting that I'm working on here, and it's, I guess, you can see it like that. Right. And it's never been quite right. And it's sort of inspired by Kate. Do you know Kate Kowitz?
no.
Kate Kowitz is an amazing artist, painter from who, she was in Germany and she's living in 1935 Germany, and did these amazing things, some beautiful, realist, honest representations of family, and then also death coming. Like there's a wonderful thing where death is taking her hand, like coming up, And so I've been wanting to do that, and I've been working on this painting posthumously with Death is Coming to take it. And I think, that's, I think, a turn that my painting is going to take during this pandemic. But it's been frustrating for me. So I keep putting it down and starting it over. And then what ended up happening is that I think I'm going to do a whole different painting on there. And I restarted the painting. You see, smaller. It's on there. And because I think it's better. So this thing happens constantly. It's funny. Painting, every once in a while, a painting paints itself, right? It's wonderful. It just happens. And then other times, it's like you're fighting and clawing for it and trying to save it, and it's like almost like you're like walking just alongside the edge of a cliff. If you see some of those pictures of the kids going to school in the mountains in China, and they're walking along the side of this cliff, with 1,000-foot drop on the side. Very often, that's what it feels like, and that never goes away. You get those paintings. You get paintings that just happen. This one that's on the screen right now, it just sort of painted itself. I mean, it was
Beautiful.
with the exception of her shirt. I had to keep getting my wife to come in and paint and do the shirts because I was never quite happy with the wrinkles on the shirt. I'm still not, right? But so you get that. And then there are paintings like my multitasking painting. I mean, look, you see I have no hair. That's because I pulled my hair out from working on that painting.
I was going to ask you what you do. Do you like go in the other room and scream or drink tequila, but you pull your hair out? Yeah.
You know what the best thing to do, I think, when that happens, right, is to sit down and stare at your painting, and just look at it. Don't paint, just look at it for a while and sort of sit with it, but actively looking, right? Let the painting tell you what it needs. It's a funny thing, the paintings will tell you what they need. Hold up on a second. Fix my computer. All right. Painting is kind of a conversation, right? Painting, it's in a way it's a performance, right? Except that the unveiling is later when people see it, but the performance is happening with you, right? During the time that it's happening, it's a conversation. You're having a conversation with the model or with your reference, and you're having a conversation with the canvas, and you're constantly asking, right? Is it what I want, right? If it's not, then what is it? What's wrong? For every brushstroke, you're asking, is this right? You're asking, where are you? What are you? And then you put it down, and is it right? You're always you're a performer, but you're a detective as well, right? You're trying to figure out what it needs to be better, and you can and staring at your painting, but really actively engaging with it will help you. It's an interesting thing. De Kooning was known to sit in front of his painting for sometimes weeks at a time, just staring at it, right? Waiting for it to tell it what it did. And sometimes it took him 10 years to do a painting, so there are always times when it's a struggle. There's always times.
Ricky, how long does it take you to accomplish something as beautiful as this?
See, well, that's the thing, right? Some paintings paint themselves, and so you cannot. Each painting is its own unique entity, right? Now, when I did illustration, I didn't have that luxury. When I did illustration, you had a deadline, and it had to be done, right? And sometimes I handed in illustrations because you had to get them on time, right? Because they're doing the type and they're sending off to the print. In the older days, now it's different, right?
Right.
But you had to get it done, right? And so I handed out paintings that I shudder. I don't. The moment I got them home, I cut them up and throw them away, right? But when I'm working for myself, it's open, right? It's not done until I feel it's done. But some paintings just happen. They just, like this one right here. This is my mother. I painted her posthumously, and she's with my daughter, and it's called War Zone. I used to call it Grandma's Hands. It's called War Zone because it's a sort of a throwback to the 70s New York that we were talking about, that I grew up in. Yep. It was all slums around me. It was all broken, abandoned buildings. We played in junkyards, right? That's what we did. And for my mother, the religion God at that time was the babysitter, right? So she would have a cross and she'd pray for us and put little crosses behind our bed, because you had no control. I mean, the 70s New York was just crazy. It was, you could be, the crime rate was like, I think, fourth highest in the United States in New York at that time. So this is wars. And then there are books in the background. Um, my mom, she came from a small town, and my mom's story is really interesting. Just it. She she was she grew up in a really small town, and there was an artist that had studied abroad and came back, and then he started teaching the children in the area how to paint, and he taught my mom how to paint, and he submitted her work when she was like 19 or 20, to an academy in Europe somewhere, and she got a scholarship, but her mom wouldn't let her go. Her mom said, no, you need to learn how to cook and clean so you can get a man sometimes. And she never forgot that, right? And she never finished college. And then after she retired, she was 65, she went back to college to paint. And so she like, it took her 15 years to graduate from community college because you had to keep repeating classes, but she was determined to do it. And she said, all these older women are saying, what are you doing? What are you going to do with that diploma? You're not going to get work from it. Why are you even bothering? And she says, nobody in my town ever graduated from college from my time, right? I'm going to be the first from my time, and I'm going to do it. And when I die, I want to be buried with my diploma in one hand and my college ring in the other. And so in the back are all her school books that she, my wife, my mother never, see that Freudian slip there? My mother never ever threw away those books. And so those are. So this painting, was just, it's a work of love, right? So
No, it's definitely a work of love. Here's Danielle.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Here's a statement from Danielle that I'm going to read. She's also in Ramsey here with us, and a wonderful all-around teacher, artist, and many other things. You have this ability to use vibrant colors, she says, without getting syrupy. There's a meatiness and realism in the skin tones and lighting that is stunning. Wow, that is quite the compliment.
See that this relates to the earlier question.
Right.
I answered by telling you to sit with your painting and to stare at it and to look at it, and
right.
You're a detective. When you're painting, right, it's important that you're a detective, right? That you're looking and you're translating and you're asking questions. Where are you? What are you? How light are you? How dark are you? Mm-hmm. And then you figure out how you're going to put it down. You put it down, and then you say, is it right? Right. And so when it comes to color, right, you make some general, you take some general ideas of what the color is going to be, right, in the area. And at the point, for most of the painting, I'm not thinking of it as a person, or an object. I'm just thinking about it as the shapes and colors that come back to my eye, irrespective of what they are. And John Singer Sargent, called it retinal painting. And he attributed that to something he learned from Monet. The idea that you're painting the shapes and forms that come back to your eye, irrespective of what it is. So most of the time, I'm not making any prejudgments on what the color is or what it should be. I'm just trying to get the colors that come back to my, to my face, right? That come back to me. Within that, within that, right? You're still asking, what color are you? You're putting it down. You're putting, and then you're adjusting. I had a friend who was a great dart player, right? And he would always say, throw the first dart, right? And he was amazing. He would win money. He would go around, acting like he didn't know how to play, and then he would win money from people. And one of the things that he did is, before, the very first time he's about to throw the dart, right? He would carefully aim, and then, it's doing the same. It's the same as the thing that we're doing, right? How high is it? What's the arc? How hard am I to throw it, right? And then he would throw the dart, and he would keep his hand there, right? And then if the dart, landed lower. Well, he would keep his hand there, grab the next dart, and put it there, right? And then he just says that one was too low and too far to the left. So he'd adjust and then throw the second dart, right? And after he hit by the third dart, he's just hitting wherever he wants. He's just exactly, hitting the thing. It's the same with painting. It's the same with color, right? You have to throw the first dart. You have to put the paint down first because the color that you see on your palette and what you see on there could be different. So you put the color down and then you assess it. Do I need to go lighter, darker, redder,
Mhm.
cooler? I don't like the colors warm or cool. I don't like that warm or cool, but is it redder? Is it
Right.
bluer? Is it yellower? And then you mix it again and then you throw a dart again. And that's really how I get the color, but it comes from not making any preconceived notions about what the color should be or what to mix. There's no formulas. I don't have a formula. If you ask me, how do I mix a skin tone? I don't know. What's the lighting? What's the situation? What are the surroundings?
Well, I want to hear the story behind this painting. So, Kathy, thank you so much for coming on, and you have a great day. And thank you so much for answering.
Thank you, Stefan, for the invitation. And Ricky, thank you so much. I've learned so much from you. Thank you.
I hope that answered the question.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, take care, Kathy. Bye
You
bye.
too. Bye.
So, Ricky, I wanted to hear the story. I want you to tell everybody the story behind this painting because I've heard it a couple of times, but I think it's really worth telling because it's so just incredible, how so many people look upon certain things as a woman breastfeeding and other things as all these. There's such controversy over this topic and this fact of life. So why don't you talk about how you developed this painting and how it came about?
This painting is another one of the paintings where I am an outside admirer of what women do. Right. One time I was coming down from my friend Clyde's house on 207th Street, and I'm on the A train, and the train stopped between tracks for the longest. It was hot. So it was middle of summer. It was hot. The train stopped, and it was crowded. The train was crowded, and it stopped between the tracks for like half an hour, right? And across from me there was a mother, a young Hispanic mother, and the father with a baby that would not stop crying. It was uncomfortable with the heat. Would not stop crying. She pulled out the milk bottle, and the baby didn't want it. Right. The father's trying to entertain the kid. The kid's not, and it's just crying. It was the most piercing screams and crying that like you ever heard. And you can imagine we're all hot and frustrated. Like the whole train. And this kid is just screaming like it's gonna be an opera singer someday, I'm sure, right? Screaming, and the fathers, they can't do anything. The mother's finding flabbergasted, and then all of a sudden she just like out of nowhere just grabbed the baby out of the stroller, right? Just opened up her shirt, pulled out her breast without any fear of who's looking. She didn't try to cover it up or anything. She was just so frustrated. And the baby latched the baby on. The baby stopped crying, and people practically applauded, right? All of a sudden, everybody smiled, and she did it. And so the baby was quiet, and I was just blown away by that. I thought that was amazing. The following week, I'm walking down the street with my wife, and it's a Sunday, and everything is closed. And we have our newborn son, it's Julian. He's 7 now, right? And he's crying, he's hungry, and my wife had forgotten to bring the bottle, and there was no place to stop and feed Julian. So she sat in front of on a little stoop in front of a building, and just pulled out her breast and just started feeding Julian, and he was calmed down. And that's just been so amazing. Men can't do that. We don't have that power, and I just think it's an amazing superpower. What's more beautiful than to be able to feed your child? So I went back, and I knew I had to do this painting. And so in the painting is my brother is on the side of me, and that's my brother posing for me, right? My brother, my wife, my son Julian, my daughter Violet, and me, painting. And this is one of those paintings that sort of evolved as it went. I changed my brother's pose several times. With me, I pretty much posed from life, but then I took a photo of my eyes looking down. Um, I did it, originally I had a baby stroller in front of me, and then I was never quite happy with that. Then I remember, oh, wait a minute, I'm an artist. I'm always carrying, because I put the canvas in front. And so, so the whole, it's kind of like a family portrait. It's,
Well, it's interesting. Janet Miranda, Ricky says, do you use photo references to paint from?
so I prefer to paint from life when I can, right? But we live in a modern world, and you can't always paint from life, So I do use photos when I can't, when it's a situation where I can't work from life. I use photos, right? I have no problem with that. Um, I so I do both very often.
Is this an example? I mean, you have a photo up on the computer there.
Yeah. So that's an example. That was actually for for the stage set for my daughter's. My daughter was in a play in elementary school, and so I'm painting the stage set for it. They did Wizard of Oz.
A dad's work and an artist's work is never done.
Yep, it's true. It goes. So most of this is out of my head. There's some photo reference up on the computer, just to give me ideas, but most of this is out of my head. So very often I'll work out of my head. Very often I'll take liberties. Sometimes I'll start with a photo, and then I'll add things. There's another painting that I have, a second painting of my wife. See, here I'm working from life, right? So, and that's the mirror in the background. There's a painting I did of my wife, another one of my wife reading to my daughter, which was a commission because I sold the first one. And this one is done all from life, right? I did, I used two mirrors the way you would in a department store, right? Anyway, in that painting, I had a really nice photo of my wife reading to my daughter, but it wasn't enough, right? So I had her, I painted that from the photo, and then I set up the background elements from life, and I sat in my studio and I worked from life on them. So I go back and forth, I don't have anything against working from photos. I think it helps, though. The more you work from life, the better it is to work from photos. The easier it is, and the more realism that you get from the photo. Because the photo, is also a liar too, right? It distorts, it has lens distortion and color distortion. Very often makes things monochromatic, right?
So I have a question for you, Ricky. So what's your preference, to paint from a photo or to sketch it out first from scratch?
If I had the resources and the time, I would never touch a photo. I would only work from life, with very rare exceptions, just because working from photos, I feel you're just home alone, right? You're part of it, working from life, you're interacting with a human being that's changing over time, right? So it's not just one specific moment. There's an interesting play that's happening between you and the person that you're painting, or the object that you're painting, that's changing over time, that you're having an experience that's together. So in essence, you're not just working on the painting by yourself, right? The model is contributing to the painting in a certain way, in a way that a photo doesn't, right? You're making, you're translating something that's 3 dimensions into 2 dimensions, right? So you have to let stuff out. You have to pick and choose, right? In order to do it. The photo takes care of that. So it makes decisions for you that you might not necessarily make, right?
Right. Now, Janet also asked, do you use prints to market your work, or only sell your original,
I do prints not to market my work, but I do sell prints. Right now my print gallery is closed down due to COVID, so I have to find a new one. But the interesting, most of my paintings, the prints don't sell, except for the multitasking. I get when the gallery was open, I would get a check here and there, like at least once or twice a month, um, from the prints. Um,
And
and
I have to say, your use, your charcoal and your drawings as well, including this one, blow me away. You're not just a phenomenal painter; you're also a phenomenal all-around artist, Ricky.
oh, thank you. Um, I love doing charcoal. I wish I could do more of it. When I do charcoal, I try to paint because I'm really a painter, not a draftsman, right? In fact, I learned how to paint before I learned how to draw with a pencil or a charcoal, which is really funny, right? So when I draw, I'm thinking of painting. I'm not thinking of line, um, and so I try to bridge that divide between drawing and painting.
Well, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. I'm gonna. I keep muting us back and forth because of the technical issues, so I'm keeping track of this juggling here. But I wanted to ask you about this because I came to your studio with my wife and Connor, our son, and we spent the day together. And I finally got to see this one up close in your studio with our friend Pam, who we grew up with. And this just blew me away. This story that you told about this painting that you did, and also the unfortunate circumstances surrounding this painting. So why don't you talk about this as I show how you sketched it here, and then go to the actual work of art.
So these are just sketches as I was trying to figure out the painting. The model is my really good friend. The mother is an actress named Pui, who's an amazing actress from Spain, and the daughter is a woman named Laura, another really good friend of mine who used to pose for my romance covers, and so it's the two of them. Um, what happened was around 2008, I was very heavy, I had a very heavy online presence, and I was very into computer graphics and stuff, and so I used to. Before, in the days before we all hung out on Facebook, I would hanging out at this website called conceptart.org. And I was on a thread that had some really incredible artists, who work in the motion picture industry, like the guy who did the concept art for Iron Man and a bunch of other people like that. And, we're having this big conversation. It's a long thread. And then all of a sudden, some guy from Iran, and now mind you, it's about the election is just about to happen, right? The students wanting to vote for the Green Party, they're trying to go for the secular government, and then you have Ahmadinejad, right? And so the students, one student starts posting on the thread, and starts showing us pictures of the police beating up students who are trying to protest, people who are campaigning for the Green Party. It's showing us, all this unrest. And so somebody said, hey, why are you posting on here? This is an art website, right? And the guy said, well, we're being so heavily monitored in Iran, especially all the news sites, that I figure if we post it to artists, they'll know what to do with it, right? And we're like, oh, I see. And every day he would do a poem, or he would post about, today I heard gunfire, and it was just, we just had this sort of, the whole group, we were like, couldn't wait. Like every day I couldn't wait to see what else this guy was going to post. And what they had been doing is they've been using Nokia phones and Bluetooth to get online, to get out to the outside world, right? They want to get their thing to happen, right? When the election came, 10 minutes into the election, right, he writes, they stole the election from us. They have Ahmadinejad winning after 10 minutes. When there are millions and millions of people voting, for the other, it's a robbery. It's, I can't believe it, right? The following day, you had mass protests, people over the vote not being counted in Iran. And there was a woman at the protest named Neda, Neda, Neda Sultani, who was, she was there at the protest, just there with her music teacher, just showing up at the protest. Well, one of the palace guards didn't like that, and a sniper took her, killed her. in broad daylight, and um, nobody had heard about it here, right? He posted pictures, look, they just killed Neda, I can't believe they did it. She was so beautiful. I saw her, why did they do this, um, and then, he's showing pictures and we're like, oh, wow, a week later, it breaks out around the whole world, right? This death of this poor woman who was just there at a protest. It was, plastered, and she became, and you still can see them. If you look at Neda Sultani, you'll see the posters everywhere around the world. It struck a chord for the people who are voiceless, right? And they were holding up her son, and I'm like, wow, in other countries people die because they want their vote to be counted, and here we don't vote, which is something amazing. So I knew that I had to eventually do this painting. So I finally got around to doing it. Originally I was going to do her with the music teacher, but then her music teacher sort of sold her out, in order to stay in the country. And
Well, that's an incredible story.
well, let me finish up. Yeah,
Oh.
so the music teacher sold her up, and so she ended up, I ended up doing this painting of her mother, because then I began to think about it from a parent's point of view. She was made into a martyr. She wasn't allowed to have a funeral, a ceremony, or a marked grave. And from the point of view of a parent, regardless of what your beliefs are, imagine you have your child and you can't bury them, you can't have a ceremony. And so that's this is the mother's point of view. And it's kind of like the Beatles. Everybody's talking about a revolution, but these are the costs.
Well, thank you for elaborating on that. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I forgot that there was a not a minor. There was another part to the story there that to end it with. When I heard it first at your home that time, I had to let you tell that story online here to our viewers. So one of the things I want to do now, Ricky, as we're getting a little closing out here, is I wanted to just say, so much respect for parents who bring their kids into the arts, and with you being in the house, I mean, I can only imagine the influence you've had on your beautiful daughter and your incredible son. He's such a cutie, and I see these photos. I wanted to show a few of them, and I'm going to let you talk about your thoughts about parenting and kids and creativity as I show a few of these while he's painting, she's modeling. Why don't you talk about that for a few minutes?
I invited a bunch of my friends over to come and paint with me in my studio. And before the pandemic, I would regularly have people come over and paint with me, just so we have a model from, like, everybody chips in for the model. And so we got my daughter to paint, to pose for this. And my son is painting with us, right? He's like 3 years old here. And he's just painting with us, and my daughter's posing. So whenever she needs money, she's like, "Dad, do you need a model?" She's very into the arts, but her thing is music, and she's heavily into jazz and funk and all kinds of music, and she's gotten.
I was ready for you on that one. Why don't you talk about Violet's prestigious career as a trumpeter right now?
Well, I'm so proud of her. She's with Jazz House Kids, and she's a fantastic trumpet player. She played at Dizzy's club in New York with her.
That's wild.
With the Jazz House Kids. But she also plays bass really well. It's really funny because her taste is so eclectic, right? So she's into jazz trumpet. She plays blues and pop on the piano, right? And some classical. She plays 70s disco, funk on the bass. She plays 70s rock on the drums. It's really funny, and she plays all of them really, really well. She's really enjoying playing. So
we're going to see incredible things from her throughout her life. I know it, and I want to show a couple of pieces of art you did of her too.
So this is my daughter posing, with the backlight, Um, it, that's me. That's Julian. I'm doing a landscape painting outside in my backyard, and Julian is painting with me. He identifies as an artist. Sometimes Julian comes in and paints with me in my studio.
Yeah, I wanted to point out that in this photo, I noticed that when I edited all these things to put it together for the show today, I noticed that you pixelated the painting on the screen, and I know why. But why don't you tell people why? Because of your nature of work with many private clients, right?
Well, first of all, I want out how much better Julian's painting is than mine. But in this was a commission portrait that I did, and I don't share portraits that I do very online, out of respect for the people that are painted for. But in this case, the the person who commissioned this portrait is of his wife. He really didn't want me to share it online or anybody to see it, and so I had to pixelate it. And
Right.
that's just
I just wanted everybody to know that.
And it's a shame because this happened to be one of my favorite paintings, but I can't post it on my website. I can't do anything with it. So what can you do? This was at this was here at Sotheby's in
Hispanic Heritage Month, right?
Hispanic Heritage Month, and those are my paintings in the background.
Ricky, I know it's a question that has to be asked. I mean, and everybody knows a certain amount of pride with their family. Everybody knows a certain amount of pride with their family when they get to see something they've accomplished. But talk about that, being there with your family, with all your beautiful work hanging there, with your kids who are now in the arts. I mean, Violet is a wonderful musician now, and Julian is taking after his dad, loving to paint with him. Talk about that.
And my wife is a very, very, very talented designer.
Yeah,
so
and that too. Please, I'm so sorry.
She's amazing. It really makes me happy to have them be my family be the subject of my paintings, and to be there with me at the opening. I couldn't think of something that makes me happy. I mean, it's just really happy to have them, and I'm there. This right here is Max Ginsburg. He pretty much taught me how to paint. He ran that early morning class
Right.
at the School of Art and Design.
Right.
And here he is painting at the Portrait Society. They're doing there we go. And that's the great Garen Baker next to me, and Max there. And
yeah, I know how much Max means to you. So I made sure that I paid, I gave him the honor of showing these photos, because I knew the show today would not, and the conversation and the interview and the whole story would not be complete without showing the great Max Ginsburg.
Max, he's like my Jewish father, and and we have sort of a father-son relationship. Garen Baker, on the other hand, is like my Jewish brother. We're one day apart. We both started painting in our early teens, and we went to that morning group together, and he's an amazing painter right here. Garen Baker on the side is, and here's Max. Here I am stretching a big canvas.
One of the things I wanted to ask you real quick was, everybody, we see all the incredible work that you've done, but man, there's a lot of work that goes into this in terms of prepping for it, your studio, organizing everything, and then boxing it to send to shows and galleries and around the world. I mean, that's some job, getting all that stuff ready.
The hardest part is the preparation for painting. That's the hardest part. All of this, I mean, the stretching the canvas is just, brunt work. You start and you do it, priming the canvas, but the hardest part is actually trying to decide, designing the painting, thinking about it. I don't want I want the painting to have design and color in it, but I don't want it to overpower the painting where the painting becomes about the design, right? So there's a very fine line between making it not look like it's designed, right? but still having, all the qualities of good composition line.
Edward had a question there. Let me put that back up real quick. Here we go. It was how does family in these times drive you to be more creative, Ricky?
Well, I mean, my family is a lot of it. A lot of my subject is my family, and it's I know that I have to be creative for them, but they are also very creative. I mean, my wife is, I mean, she's really just wonderful, creative, and I'm always inspired by her constantly. What she does and how she does her, her work and how she designs.
Right.
I'm inspired by my daughter and her passion for music.
I see that. So one of the things I want to close out with, because we're at the end here, I wanted to close out with, and I'm so thankful to have you on today. Apologies for the technical issues today, folks, with the audio, but I've been switching back and forth, muting myself while Ricky talks, muting him while I talk. But you know what? We did pretty good. So I'm you know what? Technical issues, no problem. We'll deal with them. But what I wanted to say to you in closing was I put this together, and I'm going to show this for about 30 seconds. It's a little special part where I show the transition of Ricky over the years. So we're going to go through this. I'm going to mute myself and let you talk about a couple of things, and then we'll close out the show.
So this is really funny. Way back in the late 80s and 70s, on a whim, I auditioned for a show called Starlight Express, a musical theater show by Andrew Lloyd Webber, and I got in. And so I ended up I did a tour of Japan, Australia, and then we did a U.S. tour. We played the Kennedy Center in Washington and the Pantages Theater in L.A., and then I did in Germany for 3 years.
And a big shout out to our friend and brother Dwight Toppin in the back, and also Angel Vargas, who we grew up with. It's amazing how many friends we have that just became part of this whole artistic community, and from Broadway plays to music to social media, whatever it is, visuals, photography. It's so beautiful to still be together and know that everybody's still doing something in the arts. So I'm going.
This was a painting I did of my Starlight Express experience. I did a whole mess of them. When I was in Germany, well, this one I did is from the U.S. tour, and that's one of the dancers in the show, Kimberly Gladman, and her character was completely white-faced, and she had a woman who would put on her wig and help her with her makeup, and I just thought it was a modern take on the white facing. On an interesting side note, with that painting, the previous one, the woman who. When asked about working from photos, the woman who's putting on the makeup, that's my memory of her. I didn't have a photo of her, but my ex-wife, my previous wife, who's white, posed for her, and I painted her, but made her black because it's part of the whole story of this painting, and it was something that was really important to me. So that. These are my feet after doing.
These are actually your feet, right?
This is a self-portrait, right? And this is, where Starlight Express was on roller skates. And so after a whole day of rehearsing and painting, these are what my feet felt like afterwards. And they had, burns and bruises all from the roller skates as you're breaking in the new skates. And so one day, I just painted them. I just did my feet. I painted them from life. I was in a salsa band, the lowest rung in the salsa band for my.
Well, I had to chime in here.
Ronnie Gardner.
Yeah, I had to chime in here because what I wanted to say was, folks, your kids, they may want to play instruments, they may want to dibble and dabble in juggling, they may want to dibble and dabble in whatever it is in the arts. Never, ever discourage a kid from doing anything in the arts, because look at Ricky, man. He has come from being in a salsa band to being in Starlight Express to being a break dancer and many other things. And, you know, it's just an amazing career that he's had.
Now I'm a dad. That's my favorite. That's me back when I was 17, and we were the original Zoo York skaters. And so you see on the bottom, the graffiti says Zoo York, and that was written by my friend Mark Edmund Ali, who really is the creator of Zoo York, before it became this commercial entity. When the younger kids took it and copyrighted, that was my best friend back in the 80s.
Yep. And you know,
Aldo Rob.
You know the story that Ray put the first camera in my hands, right?
Wow.
I never told you that story.
Oh, he never.
Ronaldo was the first. He was a guest on the show. He was like my fifth or sixth guest. And Ronaldo came up to me in Roxy one day back in the days when we used to roller disco. And he put a Nikon EM with a motor drive in my hands. And he said, you know what, man? I think it's time for you to start taking pictures. And that set the wheels in motion for me being in photography and social media now my whole life.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Now I wanted to say one thing, Ricky. I know this is a tough one, but I wanted to pay respects to our dear friend, Scott Slow-Mo. You know, Scott was an amazing guy, and I learned so much about creativity and the arts and just all around energy from Scott. But I wanted, in closing, for you to we lost him recently, and I wanted to pay respects to him. And I figured no better way than to let his best friend say something here about this great moment in life where you toured in South Africa and other places with him.
So here we toured in South Africa. We had a show. Reggie Kerwin was the manager, and Scott and I did the show. And it's interesting. If anybody who's ever seen Scott roller skate, he really was an artist. You know, the way he played with the music, he was like a musician on his skates. He was an artist on his skates. He changed things up. You know, he did high, low, you know, fast, and then he'd go slow. You know, it really varied. And it's funny because I learned a lot about painting from watching him skate, right? And the way he kept things interesting. And further goes to show how everything is related. Scott and I know Scott since I was like, 15 years old. And he was a really special guy. He unfortunately got cancer and then was in the hospital while he had cancer during this COVID during this time of COVID. And, I don't think he even knew why all of a sudden everybody is masks and nobody could visit him. I know
it was tough.
It was terrible. He happened to be at Barnabas in the Bronx, which is at that time was the epicenter of the pandemic in New York City, and there were freezer trucks outside, and it was so crazy in there that when he passed away, the doctors, they couldn't do anything more for him. So they called me. I was his medical proxy. I was the contact for the hospital. They called me and said that they didn't have the resources to do anything else for him anymore, so they were just going to make him comfortable.
It broke my heart. It broke my heart to not be able to. It broke my heart to not be able to visit him, and and this whole situation how it took place. But I wanted to honor him here with this beautiful memory of him with you, because I cherish looking at these photos. I can only imagine how you feel. But Ricky, I wanted to say thank you so much for coming on and being a guest. And we got through this together today, and it's a beautiful story and lessons for everybody to learn from. So I'm going to let you have the last word, and then I'm going to close out the show, buddy.
Well, thank you, everybody. I'm really honored that you all showed up for this, and thank you, Stefan. This is wonderful. I really enjoyed myself, and
well, I know you've been on a lot of podcasts. You've been on a lot of things. I just wanted to do you justice by showing you the new way of doing things, which is this wonderful platform I use called StreamYard that I produce shows on now, and including my own here. And I have to say, it's great to be able to show the work, video, stills, talk to the guests, bring guest live viewers on. So, thank you, Rick. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you later, okay?
All right, see you later. Y'all have a
Hey,
good
don't
day.
leave. I'll be right with you. Okay.
Me? Oh.
I'll be right with you. Okay. Okay, folks. So I don't think I'm having any audio issues now that I'm alone. If that's correct, I'm going to close out the show here with a few things really quick because it's been a long show, I know, but the technical problems added to it, the audio. I hope you enjoyed this with Ricky. Please hold on for 1 second as I talk about a couple of things here, including my guest next week. Which is going to be the great Andrew Scrivani. I am so thrilled to bring Andrew on. What an honor. He's one of the premier food photographers, in my opinion, in the world, and I'm sure a lot of other people's opinions. He's done the food photos, shows you I'm dating myself with the New York Times, working there for 20 years, but the dining section, as we used to call it. But now it's the food and lifestyle or whatever it is these days, I forget. Andrew is a phenomenal photographer. He's also a director and a producer, and we'll talk to him about his work, including a film that's out or on its way out. I'm a little off here in terms of talking about that because it's been a long show. But anyway, we'll bring Andrew on. I can't wait to have him on next week. And then also, please, tomorrow, join me and Emilio Pardo for his new show, Real Talk, live from the barn. That's tomorrow at 11 a.m. I produce and I direct this show. We're going to have Janet Taylor on talking about how to deal with the onslaught of stress. And then finally, I want to talk about a couple of things. I want to bring up the NYT Read Along with my colleague Sri Srinivasan, who I work with on many, many projects with his DigiMentors group. I am a DigiMentor, and we do productions of live streams everywhere as a group, and we do a lot of other social media work with many, many big organizations out there. So join Sri and his guest Diane Cardwell, author of Rockaway, tomorrow at 8:30, and join our NYT Read Along community. And then finally, tomorrow is a review of She's on Call. The doctors, the good doctors, Dr. Sujana and Dr. Marina, are off this week. But it's a special show recapping all of the shows they've done, which are about a dozen already, dealing with COVID, life, health, and many other issues. Join these two wonderful doctors who I highly look up to. They're wonderful human beings and wonderful medical practitioners. Sundays at 11 a.m. till 12 p.m. Join She's on Call, hashtag She's on Call, and also on WBAI radio on Mondays at 2 p.m. Anyway, folks, it's been a really interesting morning. We will, hopefully this wasn't my issue with the technical stuff, but we'll figure it out. And next week we're back with Andrew Scrivani. So take care, everybody, and be well. Take care. Bye-bye.